Gabon's dollar-denominated bonds falling as much as 14 cents on Wednesday. That's before recovering some of their losses. That's after the military said that it had seized power in the Central African nation. Now, the 2025 maturity fell the most before recovering about 5 cents to trade down 9.5 cents on the dollar at 83 cents. That was still the biggest fall since the COVID-19 market rout of March 2020. Its two 2031 maturities were both down around 7.25 cents. Gabon completed a $436 million debt for nature swap earlier this month, where it exchanged parts of the 2025 and 2031 Eurobonds for a blue bond, which would mature in 2038. Now, the bond fell 2.052 cents on the dollar to 98.2 cents. The next Eurobond coupon payment is not due until November 24th this year. Now, of course, looking at how markets responded today, earlier I spoke to Charles Robertson, the head of macro strategy at FIM Partners in the UK, and I asked him why investors were so spooked by the developments in Gabon.
I think what investors will be hoping for is that the new regime promises free and fair elections that might well return a very different result. I think that's what they're assuming. They're arguing that the elections were fraudulent, that they were not fair. And so in the best case scenario, you get early new elections promised within 3 to 6 months would be ideal, in which case I would think the assets in Gabon do better. That's the best case scenario. The worst case is that the army stays there and we end up seeing potential sanctions even imposed on the country, as we saw from some West African countries on Mali after one of their coups. So best case, nothing gets changed, the bonds still get repaid, oil exports are not interrupted. That's the best case scenario. Now, all the work I've done and published in the Time Traveling Economist argues that when you have very low literacy, when education is not widespread in the country, then you can't grow. And this has been a story now for 60 years. And I think that's why we're getting coups, not in Gabon, but in the other countries. In general, we're getting coups because of no growth and no hope of growth in the near term, because the education levels remain so low. It's nothing like East Africa, which is much, much stronger on this, much better. So that's the cause of the coups. But I think people are interpreting the lack of growth. They're not making that link to do with education. They're arguing it must be something to do with France, must be something to do with the colonial regime. We've been poor since we were colonies, and France is the obvious country to blame. Why hasn't France made it better? Maybe France is propping up leaders who don't help the countries get out of poverty. Now, I would argue it's actually to do with education, but it's very hard, and that's not talked about much. No one's explaining that to the people, and so France becomes the easy enemy, and I think that's what we're seeing. So when leaders who are actually trying to make a difference in Niger, for example, on education, they can't get a payoff on that in 2 years or 4 years. It's a multi-decade long process. They're getting thrown out before they have a chance to make a difference, and that is a real shame. This isn't France's fault. So the other ones, we've been seeing one country after another drop to coups, and the African Union's done nothing of effectiveness in terms of stopping it. But while it was contained in West Africa, or seemed to be contained, I don't think it was such a threat. What we're getting now is a sense that any military officer in any country who doesn't really like how the world is right now, well, how his pay is right now, just march into the presidential palace and take over. Who's going to stop him? Why wouldn't you do that? And I think that's the problem with the African Union's kind of putting up his hands in the air and saying this has nothing to do with us, we can't do anything, is that you're actually leading, you're incentivizing more people to follow this pretty worrying lead.
Let's now find out more about President Ali Bongo and his time in office from CGTN's Daniel Arap Moi.
Ali Bongo Ondimba is a Gabonese politician who has been serving as the third president of Gabon since 2009. The 64-year-old leader was born in Brazzaville, the capital of the Republic of Congo. His father, Omar Bongo, was the second president of Gabon who ruled for 42 years from 1967 until his death in 2009. Ali Bongo came to power in 2009 after the death of his father. He did not immediately step up to take his father's place, but did enter his candidacy and won a subsequent presidential election with 42% of the vote. Amid allegations of fraud, there was a recount of votes, declaring Ali Bongo the winner with 41.79% of the votes. He was sworn in as president of Gabon on October 16, 2009. An attempted coup d'etat failed in January 2019, and shortly afterward, Ali Bongo announced he would run for re-election in 2023.
I announce to you, I accept this investiture with humility and determination.
His attempt to run for a third term saw members of the country's opposition rallying behind his main challenger, Albert Ondo Osa, in the disputed election. Despite the takeover by the country's military, Ali Bongo Ondimba has been recognized for implementing a number of political reforms. Many of his supporters have credited him with modernizing the ruling Gabonese Democratic Party and for pushing through a law banning the export of tropical woods. Daniel Arap Moi, Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, European Union defense ministers have been discussing the situation in Gabon. That's according to the EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell. He says that a coup, if confirmed, will heap more instability in the region.
Well, the news are confused. I got the news this morning early. If this is confirmed, it's another military coup, which increased instability in the whole region. I cannot say more because I don't have more information, but certainly is an issue that will be put on the table when we will discuss. Look, the whole area, starting with Central African Republic, then Mali, then Burkina Faso, now Niger, maybe Gabon, it's in a very difficult situation, and certainly the ministers, today defense ministers and tomorrow foreign affairs ministers, have to have a deep thought on what is going on there and how we can improve our policy with respect to these countries. This is a big issue for Europe.